I used to think that if I just made more money, all my financial problems would go away. The problem was that when I did start making more money, I was just making the exact same mistakes. I moved across the country, I changed jobs, I was making more money, and somehow I was ending up in the exact same place. Welcome back to another episode of Notes from the Waiting Room. I think this episode is going to be a little bit more personal today because I want to talk about money. And in a way, I kind of not about money. I thought this episode would be about financial stewardship, and I guess in some ways it still is. But the more that I was praying about it and thinking about it, I think it's just deeper than that. And so I think I want to share my testimony on money, debt, spending, and how God has been dealing with my heart in that area. I don't want to talk about it from a place of I've figured it all out because I haven't. I'm still in the process of it. I'm still paying off some consumer debt, but I do feel like the Lord has brought me a long way, and that's why I feel like I want to talk about it. Sometimes we know we have an issue, but we never like dig into it. We'll be like, "Yeah, I have debt. Yeah, I spend a lot of money. Yeah, I should probably stop. Yeah, I should probably stop using Afterpay." But we never sit down and ask any deeper questions like, why am I so undisciplined in this area? Why can't I stop? Why do I break every system I put in place? Do trends have control over me? Does money have control over me? And so I feel like that's how God started revealing that I had an issue. It wasn't like, Marisela, you have debt. It was, why do you have so much debt? And so I want to start from the beginning. When I was 18 years old, I got my first credit card. It was a Discover credit card. Shame on you, Discover, because I know that y'all were plotting on college students, and I definitely fell victim. And I was approved for like $500. I remember my mom at the time, or like just growing up, she would say like, "Don't get a credit card, don't get a credit card," but she never told me why. Like she never explained to me. And I love my mom. God bless my mom. She's not the issue here. I think it's bigger than that. But I didn't know anything about the payments, how things could negatively affect your credit score, interest compounding. I didn't know any of that. And so all I know, all I know is that I have $500, and this was like 2013. So $500 was stretch. I went to Soho, and I went to Brandy Melville, and I went shopping, and I went to Sephora, and I blew those $500. I mean, I knew that you had to pay it back eventually. I was just completely unaware of how bad that could be. And so I didn't pay it back. Those $500, I did not pay it back right away. I just kind of let it sit there. I didn't understand that ignoring it wasn't neutral. I didn't understand that not paying for it right away was negatively affecting me. And I just was not thinking that the decisions I would make when I was 18 would follow me into my late 20s. Shortly after that, I got my second credit card. I got the Forever 21 credit card when it was still out. And I think this is where the story gets deeper because it wasn't just that I was being irresponsible with money, because I was, but I think that there was something happening in my heart. So I went to Catholic school my entire life up until that point, like all of middle school, like kindergarten, from the time that I was 5 years old until I was 17, I was in Catholic school. Point is that we had to wear a uniform, so I never really got to express myself with clothes as much as I wanted to during that time because I had to wear a uniform to school. So when I got that Forever 21 credit card, I was like, I'm gonna buy a bunch of cute stuff. I'm in college now. My mom's not here to tell me what I can and can't wear. Like I'm gonna be fly with Forever 21 stuff. And during that time as well, I was getting FAFSA refund checks. So if you went to college and you applied to FAFSA, you probably know what I'm talking about. But basically, when your tuition, your board, your room, your meals are paid, and if there's any money left over, they send it back to you. And so every semester, I would get a couple $1,000s back. I mismanaged all of it. So if we're just counting the money that was refunded back, let's say I got like $2,000 a semester, and I was in college for 4 years, that's 8 semesters. I mismanaged at least $16,000. Ask me where that money is because I have no idea. And so by the time I left college, I had horrible spending habits, and I couldn't save a dollar to save my life. And those habits followed me. I think sometimes we think that, when you get the job, you'll be more organized. When you make more money, you'll know how to save. When life looks a certain way, you'll be more disciplined. And that's just not true. Like, if something has a hold on your heart, like, it's going to follow you. And so my habits followed me, And I even got stuck in this like never ending game of catch up. I was like using this app that would help me or let me get paid 2 days early, and it would also let me borrow money from my next check, like up to $600. So every time I would get paid, I would have to pay that app back for the money that I borrowed the last paycheck. And so it was just a never ending game of catch up, and I was just constantly not starting at zero, but starting at negatives. And at the time, my bills weren't even like that crazy. Like I was paying Buffalo rent, which was like $550, you know. My mom was paying for my phone bill. My uncle was paying for like our streaming services as a family. So I wasn't really feeling the full weight of adult bills yet. I was going out with my friends. I was drinking a lot. I was smoking weed every day, dabbling in some other stuff. Um, Eating out every single day, doing my nails when I knew I couldn't afford it, just spending, spending, spending. And then COVID happened and I got laid off. And honestly, I was kind of happy that I got laid off because unemployment was paying me like double what I was making at my last job. And so I was chilling. I was getting paid. Everything was shut down, so I didn't have to go to the bar and buy drinks because it was closed. We weren't going out to eat because the restaurants were closed. I didn't have to buy clothes because everything was shut down. And so one day I had a major epiphany and I was like, now's my chance. I'm going to move to California. And so that was the first time that I was like, okay, I need to save money. And I did. I saved like $15,000, and that was huge for me. And I did move. Obviously, I'm in the Bay Area right now. I moved to California with $15,000, and I found a job like the Monday after I got here. And you would think that me saving $15,000 would, encourage some kind of change in me, but it didn't. Like my bad spending habits followed me all the way to California. When I got here, the quad pays, the after pays, those like pay in four apps, those started booming. And then like the monthly broken up into monthly payments, those started booming, and I signed up for everything. I took a look at my afterpay account like to prep for this episode just to see how much money I was spending a month extra. Bro, I was spending $800 a month extra, and that was like a mid month. I could spend some more some other months. $800 a month on like shoes, clothes, jewelry, bags, makeup. I was working at a nonprofit. I was making like 40K a year. My rent was like $1,300. So, like what? I was living way above my means. And again, my bills were paid. Like that's how I justified it. I was like, well, at least my bills are paid. But like I had no savings. I couldn't save anymore. And like if something happened, like I would have not been okay. So thank God nothing bad really happened that required me to need a lot of money at the time, because I would not have been okay. So because the bills were paid, I kind of just convinced myself that I was fine. And I think sometimes we do that as well, but just because your bills are paid, it doesn't mean that you're stewarding your money well. So I had payment plans, I had credit cards, I had apps, I had a paycheck. I had just enough money to keep that cycle going and thinking that that was okay. And then Jesus found me. And this is where things started to shift. The Holy Spirit didn't start with, you need to pay off your debt. He was more like, why do you need so many things? The fruit that I was producing was debt, right? We're trees, we produce some kind of fruit, good or bad. My fruit was debt. The root was identity, because I was finding my value by all the things that I could buy. Being able to buy things made me feel successful, made me feel powerful. That's where I got my value from. And that's why I feel like the Lord had to deal with that, because I wasn't getting my value from Him. I was getting it from the things that I could afford, the things that I could wear, how I was being perceived. And when your worth is tied to something that you can buy, you will always need to buy something else because the feeling wears off. You know, you buy one thing, it feels good for a couple days, and then you gotta buy something else. And it was exhausting. Like, yeah, I had a bunch of stuff, but I didn't have peace, I didn't have discipline, I didn't feel secure. And I feel like that's what God needed to confront. And so little by little, I just started getting tired of like this cat and mouse game with my money. I started getting tired of not having a savings and feeling embarrassed that I just felt like I couldn't build anything. And slowly, the Lord started changing my heart. Like it wasn't an overnight thing. I didn't just wake up one day and become disciplined. It was little changes day by day. I just started paying attention, paying attention to when I would go shopping, why I would go shopping, why I want the thing that I pick up. Was it because I was feeling sad? Was it because I was feeling insecure? Was it because I was, I don't know, bored? And then fast forward to almost 6 months ago, I lost my job. And I was just thinking about, like, imagine I would have had the same spending habits that I had when I first moved out here. Like, I honestly don't know what we would have done. But thank God that the Lord was working on me prior to the job loss. And now, 6 months into my unemployment, I have $1,600 of consumer debt to pay off. And honestly, $1,600 doesn't really sound like a lot. I think the average American has like $6,700 of like credit card debt or consumer debt. But it's still debt, and I want it gone. But compared to where I used to be, like, that is the Lord. That is the Lord completely changing my heart, because now I can go into a store and not be afraid that I'm just gonna overdo it. I can pick something up and put it down and not feel like I need to buy it. And that is real freedom to me. Like, I really used to think that money was mine. And the more that I walk with the Lord, the more time that I spend in His Word, the more that I'm learning that my time, my money, the relationships that I have, this platform that has been created are all things that have been entrusted to me. And if things are being entrusted to me, then the question to ask is, am I managing this right? And so it makes me think of two stories. The first one is the widow's oil, and it's in the Old Testament. It's in 2 Kings, and I want to talk about these two stories. So this is 2 Kings chapter 4. So one of the wives, she has a husband who passes away, and the husband had some debt, and so some creditors stopped by to basically take her kids away to sell them as slaves to cover the debt that the husband left behind. And so Elijah, the prophet, asked her, like, how can I help? Tell me what's going on. What do you have in the house? And she says, I don't have anything except a jar of oil. So he tells her, go out, borrow some containers from your neighbors. Don't get just a few, get a ton. And go in, shut the door behind you, and pour the oil into all of these containers and set the full ones to the side. So she leaves. She does as he says. And as they kept bringing the containers, the oil kept flowing from her little jar, and once there weren't any more containers, the oil stopped. Elisha then told her, go sell the oil, pay your debt, you and your sons can live on the rest. In this story, God doesn't just provide, but she has to participate. Like, she has to go to her neighbors and get jars. She has to pour the oil. She has to go out to sell it. There's obedience tied to this miracle. I can pray, Lord, help me get out of this debt, but I also needed to stop opening up payment plans. I can also ask, Lord, help me steward my money, but then that means I also have to be looking at my bank account. I know God's going to help me, but He's not going to bypass the lesson, and I don't want Him to, because if He was to just erase all my debt without changing my heart and having me learn the lesson, then I would just end up in the same spot that we started at. The other story that I think about is the parable of the talents. This is in Matthew chapter 25, starting at verse 14. This is about a man who is about to go on a journey, like a master, and he entrusts his possessions to his servants. To one servant, he gave 5 talents. To another servant, he gave 2, and to another one, he gave 1. He goes on the journey, comes back, and when he came back, the one who received 5 doubled his talents. Now he has 10. The second one who received 2 talents also doubled his talents and has 4. And then the one that only received 1 talent actually dug a hole and was afraid that he would lose it or not make any money. And so he dug a hole and put his talent in the hole and just left it there. For the first 2, he says the same thing. He says, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy. He doesn't compare them to each other. One had 5 and one had 2. They both doubled it. He does not compare them to what they have. He just expected them to steward what was given to them. And that really convicted me, because I can't look at someone else's life and be like, well, they were given more than me, so I'm not responsible. And that's not true. Like, I have been given something by God that He has entrusted me with, even if it looks small, even if it looks like it's not making any money, even if it's in my waiting season, even if I don't want it at the time, I still have something to steward. And when the master comes back, like in the story, when Jesus comes back and I have to stand before him, he's going to ask me, what did you do with what I entrusted you? And I don't want to give him a lame excuse. I don't want to tell him, like, well, I was insecure, or I was bored, or I really wanted people to like my outfit. No, I'm not giving him those lame excuses. The truth is that so much of my spending was tied to my vanity, to what my external appearance looked like, and that's not how God sees me. He doesn't value me by what I'm wearing, he doesn't value me by how much I can afford. He values me, he sees me by my heart, and that's why I feel like he had to deal with that. God's will for my life and your life is not to be crippled by debt and bound to trends. I know that that sounds like freedom, but that's actually bondage dressed up as a lifestyle. And I know that that might sound dramatic, but that's what it was for me. And now I'm just learning that I can live a beautiful life without needing to purchase something new all the time. And I can be grateful for money without worshiping it. And I think that's a big reason as to why I always talk about like underconsumption and like repeating outfits and using what you have. And honestly, it's because of this journey. I spent years thinking that the next purchase would make me feel more secure or more successful, but it never did. So I guess that's the question that I want to pose for this episode is, what is something that you have normalized that has a hold on you? For me, it was this. But for you, it could be attention. It could be food. It could be your phone. It could be success, achievements, comparison, shopping. And maybe it doesn't even look like a problem from the outside because your bills are paid and your life looks good and nobody knows. But you know, and God knows. And I don't say that to condemn anyone. I'm saying that there's freedom on the other side of letting God into that place. Because I was just talking to my best friend about this the other day. Sometimes I feel like we only invite God into things that are innately spiritual. Like we invite him to church, we invite him into prayer, we invite him into our relationships, but we don't invite him into our bank account. We don't invite him into our spending habits. We don't invite him into our shopping carts. But he wants access to those things too. Like he's not afraid of your debt. Stewardship is not just about paying your bills. Stewardship is about asking the Lord, like, Lord, what you have gifted me, what you have entrusted me with, am I managing that faithfully? My home, my job, my time, my money, my body, my gifts. Am I stewarding it? And if you're watching this and you're feeling really convicted, I do not want you to shame yourself. I don't want you to spiral. I don't want you to be like, oh my gosh, I can't handle my money. No. I want you to just start with one honest question and ask God, Lord, what is this really about? Because it could be debt, but it could also be something deeper. And whatever it is, invite him in. Because I promise you that going into a store and not feeling controlled by it feels better than any package I've ever received or anything that I've ever bought. Okay, I think that is the episode. I thought that I had a money problem, but God showed me that I just had an identity problem. And little by little, He has been showing me how to steward what I already have. Um, Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all in 2 weeks. Bye!